Hello world of YouTube and welcome to the June listening log update. I have 16 albums and some requests still in the queue. If I didn't get to your request this month, I do apologize. June had a lot stacked against me. A lot of surprises came out this month that I was immediately hyped for, so I had a lot on my plate this month, and I caught up on a few releases that are in the zeitgeist still that I figured I'd shoot some opinions at you about. Updates to the log itself. I bumped the rating of Jack White's to a 9, so that's at a 9 now. And I think that's the only one I've changed in the last month. If that's not true, you'll know in July, or in the end of July, because it's July now. Let's jump into these 16 records.
That's how we know money ain't you. Bitch, I've been had. Bitch, it's been bad.
The first album I checked out was the last one I decided to sink my teeth into back in May, and that's Pusha T's Daytona. I really like Pusha T as a rapper. I think he puts out some really good singles. I don't think his discography has culminated to much that I would admire. Outside of his single work, he really knows how to sell an album. He just can't deliver on a full package. Until today, Daytona is certainly, at least disputably, Pusha T's finest record, and I like it because it's a tight 7 tracks. The first of Kanye's Summer, where he was just pulling in everybody. He was like, I'm just gonna do everybody's work. You may not want to listen to me, but boy, I'm gonna be in your hip-hop. And I think this is a great start to that as far as Kanye's production is considered. Tracks like The Games We Play and even Santeria have these really dry, guitar-driven instrumentals that lend themselves to Pusha's just cold, lyrical rap sheet. And that's one of the things I really like about Pusha, is his dense lyricism, the way that he packs a lot of verses in with just these harsh, cold deliveries. You know, I think that while Pusha has always been that kind of rapper, this is the type of project that he should have been making all along. Just a tight set of tracks that go for the jugular for whatever topic he's talking about. You know, it's got the same kind of tropes that Pusha is known for. It's got that dope dealing, it's got that slanging, got that life he's living, but it's done in a way that's easily presentable. It's not too dense, it's not caught up in all of this other hoopla. You know, it's got 2 features, they do their job and they leave, and he ends it with just aiming his sights at someone that's bigger than him. I mean, everyone's talked about Infrared. I think it's a dope track. I think its beat is ominous. It suits the subject matter incredibly. It reminds me of like a scene in a TV show when someone's about to get killed, just shot in a drive-by. It reminds me of that. And Pusha's verses capped off or started just a great set of tracks to follow. I'm talking about the beef between him and Drake, because they both dropped pretty good tracks. I do think Pusha's was better, but I think this was a good start that he then followed through with the story at Adidon. And I think this album as a whole is great. I give it like an 8 out of 10. Definitely my favorite Pusha T project. And yeah, it's good. It's worth your time.
Lucifer whispering silently into your mind.
June 1st had 3 records come out that I was excited for varying degrees, or interested in for varying degrees. And the first one I checked out was Ghost's Prequel. The follow-up to what I would argue is their best record in their career. I've talked about Meliora with Mark from Mad Sounds. We did a video about it. I'll link it in the description. I love Meliora. It's definitely my favorite record of theirs. And I was excited for this one because of that. And man, I'm kind of let down with this project. I don't think it's their worst album, but I do think that it's not what I want completely from a Ghost project. There are still moments that I do enjoy. I like the sweeping orchestration of Pro Memoria. I love the instrumentals on here more than their previous records. I think they have more of a statement to make, or a lot more to show off in this record. Helven Testofsner, I can't speak Swedish. That is another fantastic instrumental. It's got a really good arrangement to it. I feel like where this album falters is more with the cheesier moments. While these guys have bounced off cheesier tracks in the past with a lot of character. Opening it with a rendition of Ring Around the Rosie doesn't do anything for me. A track like See the Light, which was done better on the previous record, falters a little bit here. I do like the heavier cuts on here, Rats and Faith. I like them more than the heavier cuts on some of the other Ghost records in the past. I do think that they strike a good balance here in those tracks. They don't seem too cheesy. The chords of Rats really invokes a lot of infestatious natures. But I do think the second half of the record is where the record really shines. That's where a lot of the bigger ideas that they were starting the foundation of in their last two records really shine here. I think these guys still make good music. This album isn't terrible, but I was hoping for another masterpiece from these guys, and I was a little let down. Plus, I feel like it breezes through its runtime a lot less interestingly than their previous records. I give it like a 7 out of 10. It's still really good, but it had to grow on me a little bit.
To see if I still bleed. Yeah.
And the second album that came out on June 1st that I listened to was Kanye's Ye. I have had mixed feelings with Kanye West throughout my entire time discussing music. You guys know that if you're a long-time follower of the channel. I discussed his discography up through Yeezus. I don't hate everything he's done, but I don't love everything he's done either. I think that he has had genuine moments of genius throughout his career, but he lets himself get in the way of making better music. And I guess this is the perfect embodiment of that. While I didn't necessarily want to support him on this record because I've really hated a lot of the stuff he's been speaking about recently, I listened to it purely because of this hobby. The one thing I was really curious about on this record were the lyrics more than any other Kanye West project. I love The Life of Pablo. I've never talked about it on the channel, but I love The Life of Pablo. I think it's Kanye West's second best release. It's got some genuinely great moments, and it's a great reflection of where he was at the time as an artist. And I would assume that this would sound even more haphazardly thrown together, and it kind of does, and especially with the brewings of he wrote this in 8 weeks. That makes a lot of fucking sense. It surprised me a little bit. I don't love it. I really don't love it. I think it's not his worst project, but it's pretty boring. It's pretty subpar. At least its first half is. There are some tracks where I really like the choruses, and there's some where I really like the verses in the first half. The only two tracks that I really holistically love are Wouldn't Leave and Ghost Town, and I really like how Wouldn't Leave addresses his fuck-ups in a very humanistic way. I don't applaud the actions he's done and the words he's said in recent months, but I will say I think it's interesting that he's so transparent about it. And Ghost Town is just the biggest stroke of genius on this record. Kanye's always got one. This is the one for this record. Its second half is just that great anthemic nature I want from Kanye. A lot of the production on here reminds me of older Kanye, mixed with the haphazardness of Life of Pablo, and is an interesting hybrid. But there are a lot of this thing just doesn't work. All Mine is fucking terrible. Yikes, not that good either. And I thought about Killing You. It's just fucking sociopathic. I do not like a lot of this record, but the two strokes of genius are on here, and some of the moments in the back half of the record set it above a terrible record. You know, it's got its moments, but it's overall pretty average at the end of the day. Give it like a 5 out of 10. Let's move on.
Have woken up to me saying that it's all too much.
And the third record to come out on June 1st was Father John Misty's God's Favorite Customer. Now, if you saw my end of the year list last year, Father John Misty, pretty fucking high. That was my introduction to his work, and I was familiar with his I Love You Honey Bear record. I wasn't as nostalgic about it, given that that was my introduction, pure comedy, but I like that on this new record, he tightens it up. I like that in the following the year of writing this grand sweeping statement, he keeps it tight, he keeps it a lot more personal, and he kind of mishmashes his two records together into one sound, while throwing in some more other classic songwriter influences on here. I like a lot of the classic nuance. It reminds me of some Lennon and McCartney shit. A lot of his inward tongue-in-cheek shit reminds me of stuff like that. I like that the soundscape more embodies himself than it does his influences. Better balance struck with the guitar and the pianos, and the guitar pieces even almost seem a little country tinged at points too, like later Beatles era stuff rather than early Beatles era stuff. I like that this is still as witty as pure comedy. It's just also reactive. It's not just observance. It's his place in all of this. Mr. Tillman is kind of a weird track, but I like where it sits in the record. I like that it comes early on. I also like a lot of the almost narcissism in the back half of the record that he pokes fun at while also just playing it up. I love how Josh Tillman writes his records, and I think that while this isn't as grand as pure comedy, it still achieves a level of greatness that I was kind of surprised by, given that this came out so fast after such an indulgent project as pure comedy. I love how tight this thing sounds. I like how that it just flies by, and I think it's a really enjoyable experience. If you like Father John Misty and you weren't big on pure comedy, because I know that was a divisive album in his fan base, you might like this a little more. I like it a little less than pure comedy, but I still think it's great. Give it like an 8 out of 10.
No, you can't hide. Have you lost your mind?
So I checked out Lily Allen's No Shame out of pure morbid curiosity. I like Lily Allen. I reviewed her album, Alright Still, on the channel. I enjoy Lily Allen's kind of eclectic blend of making of pop music. I never listened to Jesus, but I like her first 2 records, and I was excited to hear this one because from what I had heard, Jesus was very self-indulgent, kind of like the tongue-in-cheek that her title suggested, and it was trying to poke fun while not completely separating itself from what it was poking fun at. And I gotta be honest, I like that No Shame is a very earnest-sounding record. Like, it's very atonal, it's very smooth, it's got some island influences on a handful of tracks, some dancehall influences, but I think Lily Allen works with them well. I think her guests that she chooses to put on those tracks especially enhance the vibe and make them seem a little more genuine. I think it's more fitting that she uses them here because it almost seems like she's bringing new life to earlier influences that she had in her first couple of records, unlike Drake, who uses them just as some sort of stylistic choice, with the exception of On Views. I like that she's very frank about her life. I like that she does what some of her other contemporaries in pop music do, but I like that she's even more blunt about herself. She's even more blunt about her life. This is her album that talks about her redemption. It talks about her coming back. There were lyrics where she was so open about cocaine addiction that made me think. This album made me think about things in a very different way, and I'm appreciative of that. Apples and Cake and 3 are all some of her best tracks of her career. I was thoroughly impressed by this thing. I think that it's a little hefty, but it's not terrible as a result because of it. It just lets it down. It holds it back just a little bit. But I like this thing, and I'll be pushing it to people that want some more catchy pop music in their life. I give this thing like a 7 out of 10. Genuinely surprising stuff.
It feels so good it should cost. Brought an alligator, I ain't talking Lacoste.
The third in the Kanye West saga, Kids See Ghosts. Big surprise. I think it's interesting that from what I've seen of the community, no one really addresses members of the zeitgeist, people that contribute to popular consensus. And while I don't think this thing is perfect, I don't think it's a 10, I think this is the best thing either party involved with this has been a part of in the last decade. This is the best thing Kid Cudi's done since he's come out, and Kanye West hasn't produced beats this good since Late Registration, which, I mean, fucking Fourth Dimension sounds like a cut that could be on College Dropout or Late Registration. I like that Free sounds like some big beat shit from the late 90s. There's so much on here that just fucking works. I was floored by this record. It was a complete surprise to me. We all know Kid Cudi, while I loved his record that came out last year, has been on the ropes for a majority of his career, but I like that he sounds more lively here. I like that he sounds more alive on here than even on some of the cuts in his Golden Age material. I like that Kanye has a little more ferocity in his voice. He's not drowned out in all of these fucking egomaniacal ideas. He just lets himself rap. I like that his bars don't fully feel like Kanye West bars, you know? I like that just this is almost like cherry picking the best out of these artists and letting it shine. If I were to make one complaint, I think Fire is kind of an underwhelming track. But that's it. The rest of this thing's great. Mos Def is great. I love that Mos Def is still relevant in 2018, and I'm glad that Kanye West is giving him work. Give a single like a 9 out of 10. Not a Fantano 10, but I think it's pretty fucking good as well. I was shocked to see the Venetian Snares dropped a second record this year, and it's a split with Daniel Lanois, and it's this weird mashing of ambience and breakcore. And I'm kind of surprised that this thing works really well. It has a lot of the abrasive stuff that he's known for and was present on the album he released earlier this year, but it's matched with these really, really ambient, dreary guitar lines that work surprisingly well. Not to spoil, but I've been trying to encapsulate ideas that are present on this record without hearing this record. This embodies a lot of where my creative headspace is at, and I think that's a big reason why I enjoy this thing so much. I found myself revisiting a lot of these passages just with a warm heart, mostly because I take a lot of influence from Venetian Snares, and I like that he's pairing his really unappealing, abrasive, percussive production with something a little more serene. It's not like what he was doing in his earlier work where it's mashing with classical. I almost think this is a little more lo-fi and a little more indie, but it's a little more charming as a result. I'm absolutely in love with this thing, and I think that it's better than the release he put out earlier this year, surprisingly. I give this thing like a 9 out of 10. Genuinely engaging in a way that I wasn't expecting, and I'm really glad that he decided to work with Daniel to put out something that's, again, not quite out of his wheelhouse, but still very indifferent for him. It's fucking awesome. So the first request I got this month was for a band called Coil Guns and their album Millennials. It was requested by G-Man Yoki, and this album is just what I'm wanting. He said that this will scratch your need for aggro mathy music, and it does to a degree, but it also scratches an itch that I didn't know I needed scratched, and that's Mike Patton's side project itch. This thing reminded me a lot of Tomahawk, which isn't my favorite side project of him, but I like the more grimier guitar lines and instrumental passages. The track Spectrogram's really dense guitar work, and even on tracks like Deletionism and Wind Machines for the Company, one of the more shorter tracks on the record, just have these really gritty, edgy guitars that remind me of Converge with the soundscape and production that's present in Tomahawk. And it helps that there's a track like Music Circus Clown Care that also reminds me of a Mike Patton project, just in its structure and its writing. And a lot of the writing on here is like that too. It's sharp at some points, it's a little off kilter, but it's everything that I want from this type of music. It's not perfect. I think that they could have gone even more dense, even more erratic than they do. By the tail end of the record, I feel like a lot of their ideas are kind of spent. But I do like what's here. I think it's a good core, and I think it's a good foundation for these guys to build upon, and I thank you for the suggestion, because it's a great record, and it's definitely, like, it's one of those records that I'll keep coming back to just for its soundscape alone. I really like the tone these guys set, and again, it scratches an itch that I didn't know I was getting scratched at all. I like the kind of sludginess that some of these cuts get to with these jagged guitars. It's a nice dichotomy that I think works really, really well, and I give this thing like an 8 out of 10. It's pretty fucking superb. Thank you for the suggestion, G-Man Yoki. I know you suggested another one that I didn't get to this month, but I'm hoping to get to it within the next month. And the next album that was suggested was done by Rocked and Reeled in Reviews, who did a couple of suggestions for the channel.
Suggested Extremities by Gaia and Legend of the Human.
And then the latest one he suggested was a band I'd never heard of, again, called The Fierce and the Dead, and their newest album, The Euphoric. And he described them as this kind of instrumental band, which I was intrigued, because I like me some instrumental music. And I think this is pretty good. It's not bad at all. It's a little inconsistent, but I like it. I like that these guys are daring enough to make an instrumental project and make it a full band experience. I do feel like some of these tracks almost lend themselves to vocals. They almost feel like they're missing that little something else to put them over the edge. Tracks like Truck, and even other tracks that I really like, that like Dancing Robots, I feel like could have used a little more oomph, something like vocals to kind of spice them up a bit. I like that there's like spoken word on one of the tracks, which is really cool, but I would have liked a little more, because I feel like there are some tracks that work, like Dugtown, Cadet Opal, Parts 7 and 8. Those are instrumental tracks that I feel like work. They build upon their foundations they set forth in their initial grooves really, really well. And I think these guys are really interesting, and I'm definitely going to be keeping my ear out more for what they release. But I do feel like there are tracks here that could be done better. Some of it almost reminds me of background music that you would hear in like an independent game, or even in a newer anime, or like maybe an older anime from the 2000s, because let's be honest, I'm pretty out of touch with anime. But some of the stuff could have been backing instrumentals for that, and I would have definitely heard that. I think it fits well, but this isn't what you're hoping for, man, and I'm sorry that I'm not giving it the immediate holistic praise that you're wanting. But I do think it's really good. I give this thing like a 7 out of 10. It's really good. If you're a fan of more tight, well-constructed instrumental rock, these guys are definitely up your alley. If you like backing music for like independent games or anime, these guys are definitely up your alley. These guys are pretty good. They got some good synth work, some good guitar work, and some good percussive work as well. These guys, they got it.
About not doing it the same way as before, and it makes me wanna puke my fucking guts out on the floor.
I was shocked. You know, I was shocked that Mike Shinoda decided to drop a solo album in the midst of all of this still lingering mourning for Chester Bennington. And the album's called Post Traumatic. It fits. I was just expecting some songs dealing with what he's been going through since Chester's passing, and I think those tracks that are there that do that are executed wonderfully. Especially the second track on the record, where he's talking about him dealing with Chester's death and how it's been almost this exhausting experience trying to get over someone because he's a public figure, because they were a big band. You know, he talks about his experience of doing the show in his memory, and it was a really interesting look into that show, and I loved it. My big issue with the record is a majority of it just sounds like pop rap. I mean, he's got Machine Gun Kelly on a song, who I can't fucking stand. A lot of the production just is almost an offshoot of the stuff they were doing on One More Light, and I wasn't big on that record, so I'm not gonna be big on it now. I think it's cool that Mike isn't just rapping. I like that he's singing, because I think that was a great addition to Linkin Park's music, was when he started to sing, and I enjoy when it's here. I just think that this feels a little tonally inconsistent, given the title, given some of the subject matter. It just feels a little sporadic at points.
While sonically having the same kind of atonal nature that just presents this weird juxtaposition that I still can't wrap my brain around. I don't like that.
I think it would have worked better as like a small little EP that was meant in memoriam for his friend, and not stretched out a little thin like it is, like the final product is. I give it like a 5 out of 10. It's good. It's a little average, but it's got some moments that I genuinely were surprised by.
I'm a top shot, the kid, stay in your lane. The cop shot the kid, same old same. Pour out a little.
And the last album throughout this Kanye West fest that I listened to, and probably am going to listen to, is the new Nas album, Nasir. Now, people are of two minds of this record. They either think it's alright, or they think it's a hot, steaming pile of poo-poo. I think it sounds pretty good. I think Not For The Radio and White Label are fucking tight production, tightly produced tracks, Simpler Things, more open production works. The sample work on Cop Shot the Kid and Bonjour are fucking dope. I like a lot of Kanye West's contributions here. Nas, on the other hand, when he shines, he's great. Simple Things, I like the bars on that. White Label even has some moments. There's some verses throughout this record that are really good. Cop Shot the Kid, another great, I love that fucking cut. But he dives into those Nasisms, those Nas territories that he's done in the past, and boy, do these sound even older now. The anti-vax bars, Nas. Come on, man. Why you gotta rap anti-vax? It's just a difference in beliefs, but it's just, it breaks my heart. And some of the other, like siding with Kanye shit you're doing on this record, man, it just hurts you. It hurts me, because I love you, Nas. I know you're never going to make Illmatic again, but I'm not wanting you to. I liked your last record. I thought Life is Good was pretty good. I like Hip Hop is Dead. I defend that record, but man, I cannot defend some of the shit here. Nas is the most inconsistent thing about this record, though. Everything else works. Even some of the features, like the Dream. He shines a little more than your average Dream feature. Man. But I will say I still like this record a lot. Like Nas's faults bring this album down from being damn near perfect, but it's still pretty great, and I mean, I am loving it. I give it like an 8 out of 10. This thing is pretty fucking good. You just gotta look past some of those really shitty bars, some of those really shitty ideologies Nas is representing on this project. Time change, brightness change. The next record I listened to was the latest 9 Inch Nails album, Bad Witch, which was originally, I guess, pitched as the third in the trilogy of EPs they've been doing. You guys know, if you don't, I love 9 Inch Nails. They're like one of my favorite bands. I'm a huge Trent Reznor fan in general. And I think that when he officially added Atticus Ross to the roster, almost reinvigorated the band's sound. And I've loved the 2 EPs they've done, and I love this album a lot. It does something that I was hoping would have been done after Hesitation Marks, because one of the most interesting parts of Hesitation Marks to me is the end with the saxophone that leads into the really, really harsh noise. And this album has both of those things, and the EPs beforehand also had a lot of those harsh noises, but I love that this is like almost a jazzy 9 Inch Nails album. It's something I never would have thought have happened in my life, but I fucking love it. The first single, God Break Down the Door, I love that it's like this very off-kilter sounding, just experimental for them electronic piece, and I like that a majority of the record plays to that song's strengths, with Play the Goddamn Part being this instrumental jazz track that almost is reminiscent of the soundtrack work they've been doing. I love the really moody atmosphere that this album contains, and I like that it's very Bowie-esque in some regards, especially on God Break Down the Door. Really the only song that sounds like a 9 Inch Nails cut is Shit Mirror, and it's a good song in itself as well. I love this thing. I was blown away by this thing, and I cannot put this thing down. It's hands down, and I'm not saying this as an insult to anything they've done in this time frame, but it's definitely the best thing they've done in maybe the last 10 plus years. This is the best 9 Inch Nails album since With Teeth, hands down. I love its tones, I love its sounds, and I give it like a 10 out of 10. I can't find a single thing that I really find wrong with this thing. Like a large corner of the internet, I'm a big fan of Death Grips. I think they're definitely one of the best things to happen in this decade. I think they're one of the most experimental music acts in a long time, especially that's broken out into any sort of notoriety. I really think that they're one of the big artists that's the future of music. I think that they do a lot of interesting things, and every time a Death Grips album comes out, I never really know what I'm going to get, and I'm excited about that. These guys have been around for almost 10 years, and they're still captivating after a slew of albums. And after Bottomless Pit, which felt like a little bit of retreading and retooling some of their ideas in a new facet, I was intrigued to see where they would go next. And on this record, they do something similar to a heavier degree, but they shoot it into a territory that is almost alien to them. This thing sounds the most like a diverse set of tracks than anything they've ever done. There's songs like Death Grips Is Online and Ha Ha Ha, which sound like fever dreams from 1991. More so than other records, I really like the instrumental breaks that the band goes through, the shorter tracks where Zach Hill gets to really flex his drum skills. I've never really been a fan of the Death Grips instrumental projects, like Fashion Week, but I think that this record has some of the best uses of those. I like that this album just sounds like a completely different beast, and I think it's partially due to the production. A lot of the way the band sounds and is put together just sounds incredibly fucking weird. It doesn't sound like your typical post-2010s hip-hop project. It sounds very old-fashioned. It sounds really old school, thanks to some of the turntablisms and stuff. And I really like that. I like the sample uses they do, or the sample usage they do of themselves. Like, I like a lot of what this project has idealistically. I don't think it's their best project, but I do think it's another notch on the Death Grips belt. I think that it's still forward-thinking. It's still very experimental in the right ways, and these guys just get it. They know how to do it.
I think it's interesting for a band that's incorporated elements like heavy sample work and old school hip-hop ideologies, that they still can tackle those ideas in a fresh mindset and make them sound completely new and original.
And it's still fascinating to see what they do musically. I give this thing like an 8 out of 10. It's definitely, in the pantheon of their work, it's on the lower echelon to me, but that's still, like, better than a myriad of other records that have come out this decade. This thing is another staple in the Death Grips catalog.
Drinking Henny and I'm trying to forget, but I can't get this shit out of.
So Post Malone has been, you know, thrown around a lot in recent months to me, and I kind of gave in and listened to his newest album, Beer Bongs and Bentleys, knowing I'm not the biggest fan of his stuff. I don't think that he's all that interesting. He kind of fits into a group of pop that I just never really enjoy. But I do think this record is alright. While he does have a lot of soundscapes and musical compositions that are very akin to modern music that I don't like, I do think his personality shines through really well on this project, at least. I think that while there's a lot of pop tracks and there's a lot of features that are akin to trap and stuff like that, I think that Post Malone, when he's writing his music, it still has a broad appeal, but it feels like himself. And I don't hate Post Malone as a person. I'd love to just hang out with Post Malone. He seems like a really chill dude. And this record is pretty chill. I don't think that it's quite exactly like other dudes in his lane. I think the guy that comes closest to sounding like Post Malone is Lil Uzi Vert. I'm not the biggest Lil Uzi Vert fan either. And he has some pretty decent hooks on this thing. The lyric sheet is a little drab. It's a little too much at points. It's a little, all right, I get it. You're sad, you're lonely, and you're in this poposphere, but it's not all bad, and I kind of was surprised by that. Kind of in the vein of the new Cardi B album, I was a little surprised at how much of his personality shines through on this, just like on her record. So I mean, it's not bad. It's a little long as well. It's just because it's not my thing. It's a little long to me, but yeah, give it like a 6 out of 10. It's not bad. You could do worse.
You get sentimental tonight.
Speaking of listening to really shitty records, you could listen to the new Panic at the Disco record, Pray for the Wicked. I don't like Panic at the Disco. Never really been the biggest fan of theirs. I think their best record is still a 6, and it's their second record to me, if you didn't know. But I've never been a fan of Brendan Urie's vocal stylings. I think they were better when they were trying to be either pop punk or in their own identity in the zeitgeist. I don't like that they're kind of doing what a lot of bands on that era are doing and just doing pop. I don't think any of those guys have done it well except for Paramore. But this record, being a one-man show now, is basically just a little more of a fleshed-out Death of a Bachelor. You could tell by listening to Death of a Bachelor that there were some inconsistencies behind the mix, and it could have been because there were other people in the band. But on this, he doesn't have to worry about that, so he can make whatever the fucking shitty music he wants. And the only songs I like sonically are One of the Drunks and The Overpass. I love that tight rhythm section in Overpass, but everything else about the song kind of sucks. Fuck a Silver Lining has a decent Diet 21 Pilots backbeat. I think the lyric sheet on here is just vapid and self-indulgent in all the wrong ways. I think Brendan Urie, while he can hit them high notes, he ain't a singer I like all that much. It's not for me. It's not something I like. But from what I understand, a lot of the Panic! At the Disco fandom doesn't really like this album either, so I don't feel that bad for shit-talking it. But I didn't like Death of a Bachelor either, so whatever. Give this thing like a 3 out of 10, because I have more positive things to say about it than I did some of the other albums this year that I hated, like Mania. I was very concerned when Gorillaz said that they were releasing a new album this year, because Humans was a mess. It was a mess. I still defend it. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. It's got some genuine diamonds in the rough, but I was really concerned the entire promotion cycle of this album until Humility dropped. I fucking love Humility. I love its laid-back atmosphere, and I love that the album follows through with that tenfold. I like that this feels like a cohesive project. While Gorillaz have been this hodgepodge of a band throwing everything at the kitchen sink, they've kept it tonally consistent. Plastic Beach is a chill time with some vignettes into other genres. Same with Demon Days and their first album, and this is more like that. I think it's a smart move to pull back on the features, having features only on like 3 songs. The features that are there, though, do a great job. Snoop's verse in Hollywood, one of the smoothest verses I've heard from him in a long time. I would have liked to have seen a little more Noodle vocal work, because Noodle has been a presence on their primetime material, and I think that while making this a 2D-centric album works, and I think it's good, it could have been made a little better with like a little more of a perspective from the rest of the band. I like a lot of the soundscapes being this blending of Plastic Beach's mellower, synthier side with the first album's kind of percussive elements. It's got a little more melding of what they've done in the past with a lot of bleak lyricism that I think works. I like a lot of the lyric sheet on here, and I think that as a huge fan of the Gorillaz, this pleases me a lot more than their previous record, which I plan on making a video on, but that's for another day. It's definitely what I would have loved Humans to have been as far as a comeback goes. I give this thing like a 9 out of 10. It's really fucking good. But that does it. Those are the albums I listened to. I know there was another request by my buddy Austin. I plan on getting to it in the next month, because I don't think there's much coming out this month that I'm excited for. But I'm gonna go. I've been ViralRak. You guys have good eats, laughs, situations, and I'll see you another day.